Welcome to Golf Smarter Mulligans, your second chance to gain insight and advice from the best instructors featured on the Golf Smarter podcast. Great golf instruction never gets old. Our interview library features hundreds of hours of game improvement conversations like this that are no longer available in any podcast app.
The missing link is that we do exercises and stretching and all that, and we just hope our body figures out how to use it. And what I will actually teach people to do is to have a place in their bodies, they learn how to engage core, and that everything they do is assisting them in enhancing the new patterns they're establishing in their bodies. And that's the missing link. So what I do is help people work really well with their bodies while they do their golf swing. I don't teach the golf swing. That's what golf pros do.
With another interview from the archives of Golf Smarter, here's your host, Fred Green.
Welcome back to the Golf Smarter podcast, Ann.
Thank you very much, Fred.
This is part 2 of the conversation that we started last week with Ann, and you got a good introduction in on what it is that you do and what the Titleist Performance Institute is and how you take advantage of that. I want to get deeper now. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the Golf Smarter for Members Only podcast are for the real hardcore golf junkies, so we can get technical here.
Right.
They like it when we get technical and get into some things that are just a little bit deeper in the quality of the content. And I actually want to start with a letter that we received from Renee Carter, who said some very nice things about the podcast, but was a little frustrated that we don't talk a lot about women on the podcast. I know that the audience is 96% men, but that's okay. We still have women listeners. And she wants to know a couple things, but I'd like to ask, her question, which is, are there different issues for women golfers than for men?
Very much so. So, in general, women tend to be more flexible than men. And in general, men tend to be stronger than women, especially upper body strength. I mean, that's a pretty well-known fact. And so for women, a lot of times their golf swing is different. I mean, I am often marvel at women that look like they make no effort whatsoever and can hit the ball really, really a long way. So what they do is they're able to sequence their bodies better. And when you sequence, so you move the body parts, the legs, then the pelvis, then the trunk, then the shoulders, you actually can create a lot of speed in the club head without putting a lot of effort into it. So it's basically more of a momentum process. Whereas with men tend to be stronger, so they don't sequence as well, but they have enough muscle strength to be able to kind of work through places that would otherwise give them difficulty. So because they don't sequence, but they hit it harder or can get the club head onto the ball, they don't use their bodies as effectively, but they still get the results that you're looking for, which is very problematic. So I see this all the time, that I see men who have very limited range of motion, not really good balance, but play a good game. And so they get their goodies, basically, their good game, or they may be able to hit it far, but it's costing them in their bodies. And that's what I see as they get older.
But aren't they at a ceiling as far as how good they can get? I mean, isn't there that going on?
Well, so here's the thing. Maybe, maybe not. Could they do it with more ease? Could they progress their game a little bit more? Until you change, you can't really tell. That's the whole thing, is that you only know what you know at the point that you have it. And, I see people who played really good golf and then they're in their 50s and their back are killing them so much they can't play anymore. So they got the good game earlier on, but it cost them later on, and that's what we really want to try to avoid. We would like
or
everyone,
those of us who started later in life.
Yes, right. And that's very problematic.
Who have the desire and the love of the game and the
love
addiction,
of the game, right?
But have the issues with how we hold our body and whatnot.
Yeah, and I was so the thing with the women is that women need to work a lot more on upper body strength. Okay, that's kind of their big place that they lack it, and men need to work more on balance and flexibility. I mean, those are the two kind of things that I see. The other problem with women more than men, I mean, this is true for both, is that especially older women, when we were younger, I'm 56, so I'll cop to that. We didn't really get to play many sports. Okay. I mean, this was not how we grew up. Women weren't really allowed to. So with men, a lot of times when I'm teaching them, I say, okay, get into the ready stance. Well, guys know what that is. Women look at me like I told them to blast off to Mars. They have no idea what that's about. So I have to actually teach them how to engage their body in a way that men learned when they were very young, because they were taught how to do that and women were not. And so sometimes that can get into the mix as well for women to be able to play more effectively. They have to learn how to do something that they should have learned when they were 5 years old but didn't, and now they're 45 years old, and it's a little harder for the body to track it. I mean, that's just the reality of how it goes. So and then women just don't have as much power. That's the other thing. It's kind of frustrating. So they have to play a better finesse game, is what I find, than the men do. So
the short game is critical for women.
Yes.
Because they can really take advantage of
right.
it.
And I always tell them,
and they get to play in the short tees anyway.
Exactly. Well, some of them do. I mean, I play with a lot of women that play back, They don't want to play the short ones. They like to play the longer ones. They're good golfers.
Women have the same kind of ego as men on the golf course?
Oh, you bet.
Oh, come on.
Okay. And plus with it, we have to have like this foursome behind us, like of men glaring at us, like we don't know how to play. That's
what are you doing on those tees? Go
exactly,
move up.
Exactly.
Oh,
so
God.
it's always kind of an
Even
interesting
here
thing.
In elevated Marin County, we have that.
We do.
It's the Northern California.
Actually, quite a bit. I see it a lot, and I've been playing golf for a long, over 40 years, and, it used to be worse. It's better now than it used to be, but it's still a huge issue for women to play golf. It's very intimidating,
It's too bad.
It is too bad, and especially for older women who want to learn how to play. We've been following this discussion on LinkedIn about how do you promote the game? How are we going to get the game to be accessible to a lot more people? And people.
Yeah, these are golf professionals who are having an ongoing discussion.
Exactly.
Of how to generate more business. We're all dying here. Right?
Yeah, because the peak was in the early 90s. I just heard that statistic the other day. That's when the peak golfers were, and so
Tiger was young.
Right, we were all it's all been downhill for them. So one of the main things is to get women to play. But if they go out, they're not going to be very skilled, and so to get out on a course and have two foursomes of guys behind them glaring at them the entire time doesn't make you play golf better. That's kind of the reality.
And I threw in my 2 cents of why are we not promoting 9-hole courses?
Right.
The smaller courses, and yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a lot of things that we need to look at. So a long answer is basically the difference between men is that men need more flexibility and women need more strength, is kind of how it is. That's a very big generality. More importantly, most people, men and women, have a dysfunctional pattern that is ingrained in their bodies that causes the problems of not being able to create good strength and power, as Fred's sitting up tall again here.
I keep finding myself relaxing. It's like, no, get back into the sit bones and get into a neutral position.
Right.
Yeah, it's hard usually I don't do interviews when I'm looking at somebody, or even worse, they're looking at me.
Exactly.
so yeah, busted.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the pattern that we're talking about, and this is one of the things they talked about at the Titleist Performance Institute, is called a lower cross part pattern. And what it is, there's a muscle that goes from our low back, all the vertebrae in our low back, and comes out and attaches to the inside of our thighs. And that's a muscle called the psoas. It hooks up with another muscle called the iliacus, so it becomes the iliopsoas as it comes out and attaches to the inside of our thighs. Now, when people get groin injuries, it's usually the psoas muscle that gets injured. And in almost everybody I see, the psoas is really tight, okay? And what happens is that when you stand and the hip flexor, the psoas and the hip flexors are very tight, it actually does something neurological to the body called inhibition. So the tight hip flexors makes the gluteal muscles, which are the butt muscles, the lower abdominal muscles, and the hamstring muscles, which are in the back of the legs, turn off, actually not work. So what happens is if you sit and stand in this lower cross pattern, and then you go out to do your golf swing, it's going to kick in. And that's where we're going to see things like a sway and a slide and early extension and not being able to rotate. And so whether it's for men or women, if this pattern's ingrained, you have to start to get this pattern to change, which means you have to make the psoas have more length. You have to be able to get the abdominal muscles and the gluteal muscles and hamstrings to work more effectively. And like I said earlier, for them to all play nice together. So whether you're working on strengthening or flexibility, it's still a basic pattern that you have to intervene with before any of that can be very effective.
Well, let's talk about another question that Renee had about good fitness regimen. Actually, let's talk about the Psoas for a second. Are there things that we can do to stretch it out?
Right. So the Psoas, it's really great to stretch it out. There's things that people can do, like sort of the lunge pose does a stretch because it stretches the front of the hip joint, the upper thigh. Those are stretches you can do. Kind of a lazy person's way of doing it is to like lay flat on a bed and get close to the edge and just let one leg hang off the edge of the bed, and you'll feel that stretch happen. So it's a great thing.
Hang from the hip?
Yeah, from the hip. From the hip. So you kind of slide over so that at the hip, the leg hangs off the edge of the bed.
Oh, I see. The right side of the edge as opposed to down at the bottom of the bed.
Yeah,
okay.
The right side on the edge of the bed.
Yeah.
So you, well, you can do it at the bottom too, but then you have to bend one leg and let the other. You want the leg to hang in space with the body being supported is what you do.
Okay.
So that's a real easy stretch to do.
Okay.
And it's
so that's
nice.
Something you should do in the morning when you get up.
When you get up, yeah. And you have to, but when you do that, before you move that leg, you have to make sure that your abdominal muscles are engaged. So what that feels like is that you're pulling your belly button towards your low back. That's the cue they give a lot of times. So you want to hold that core muscle and then stretch off that, because if the core isn't engaged, if the abdominals aren't engaged, what happens is as your leg hangs, you'll feel your back arch. So all you're doing is causing more shortening in the low back. So,
okay, you know what? Let's walk over here to your massage table here, and I'm going to explain this to me.
Okay.
Let's create a visual picture here if we can.
Okay, so Fred is laying down on the table.
On my back.
On his back. He's got pillows, too many pillows under his head. There you go. And what he's doing is he's over on the edge here, and before he lets that leg go down, he's going to pull in his belly button. He's really going to pull it in. Now let the leg go down, and what you're going to feel is it stretch. Do it just kind of gently. You don't want it to pull too much. So if it feels like it's hanging too much, you can kind of scoot back onto the bed a little more. But as you do this, now Fred knows how to engage his core muscles. So engage your core, like do the Kegel, and you see how that changes the stretch? Mm-hmm. So once you engage the core, what happens is that the body now has a central line that it can start to move off of. And this is what it'll learn for the golf swing. So everything that he's doing in this exercise right now is what I'll want him to reproduce when he does his golf swing. So if he holds the core, he does this stretch, he's going to feel that there's a difference in what he feels when he stands right away, and then when he gets into the golf swing, his body's going to be more familiar with this pattern and be able to rotate more from his hips. Okay?
And so how long should I hold this position?
Okay. So usually they say to hold a stretch 25 to 30 seconds. The reality is that if you do a stretch properly, and that means that your body's in tone and alignment, that you're breathing, that you take the stretch to where you very first feel it. And that's the biggest problem, is most people overstretch. So if you take it to where you very first feel it and then allow the muscle to elongate and the joints stay soft, the body actually allows the muscle to lengthen. And what you'll feel is you hold it for a while, and then all of a sudden it feels like it can move a little more. And that's really what we want to get. Now, sometimes people who are good can get that in 15, 20 seconds. Sometimes it takes longer. Okay?
I think it's really important to talk about how that you don't force it.
No, because if you force a muscle,
I want to stretch until it hurts. Right.
If you push it too much, what happens is that there's actually a mechanism in the muscle that tries to protect it from being injured. So you overstretch, it actually makes the muscle shorten. So here you are trying to stretch and lengthen a muscle, and it's actually shortening. So you pull on it. So what's happening is you're actually tearing little microfibers of muscle in there by doing that and creating scar tissue, which is not exactly what we want to do in our stretching program.
Yeah, right.
So now come on up. So he's going to now bring his leg up. He's going to come off the table after stretching one leg. Got it very well. Yes.
Thank you. Yeah. Roll to my side. Don't just lift myself from my gut.
So he's going to stand up. Okay. And now he's just going to see if he can feel a difference from one side to the other.
Yes.
Okay. So what do you feel that's different?
Looser in the psoas area.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Now just
and a little bit taller.
and taller
on the right side that I stretched out.
Exactly. So it has an effect all the way through the whole body. Now lean forward like you were going to sit up for your golf swing, and how's that hip feel?
Great.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
Compared to the left?
Sure.
So now if you turn, you can turn to your right. You can feel there's more room for you to rotate, right? And you know where to rotate from, which is the other thing. Look how far you're going back. So he's almost completely turned back without doing his little sway. Right. So what he has is that the things that he has in his body, just doing that one stretch just corrected several of them.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you want to do that obviously on both sides.
Right. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay. So that's a early morning stretch. That's one of the things you should do first.
Yeah, it's tough.
You obviously can't do that at the golf course.
Well, if you can find a bench, you could actually lay down and do it. If your back's a little achy and you're kind of tight.
So then actually in round,
in round, you could do something like a lunge. That's kind of an easy one that you can do. It's similar sort of thing. So you put one leg forward, the other leg back.
Yeah, let's do that.
Like you're doing a lunge. So now do it on your other leg.
Okay.
So you did the right leg. Now we're going to have you stretch. So if you're going to stretch the left leg, you actually lunge forward with the right leg, put the left leg back. Now, the thing that Fred is doing is very common. His body is now angled. I want his body square.
So I want to face my hips forward.
Forward, exactly. And you'll feel that's entirely different to stretch it with your, rather than that.
Right. So it's really important to make sure that when you're doing this stretch,
that you're in alignment.
That you're
right.
Everything is facing forward as opposed to opening your hips up and turning your neck to the right over your shoulder.
Right.
Your shoulder doesn't want to be
because you have to remember that every single thing that you're doing in your exercise is what you want to teach your body to do in your everyday activities. Mm-hmm. So if you're slumped, or if you're rotated, or if you're leaning over, or you're cattywampus, if the things aren't in alignment, your body's going to go, well, this is what you just taught me. Isn't this what you want me to do? Mm-hmm. So you have to be, I tell with my clients initially, you have to be like exquisitely careful when you first do it. It's not to do tons of it for a long time, but it's to really start to track your body and make sure that everything's in alignment and the joints are gliding and that your core is engaged and that you're breathing, because this is what you want your body to learn in whatever activity that you're doing. So you want it to be able to manifest immediately into your life in a way that it teaches your body to reinforce this core alignment that we've been talking about.
And is this the type of stretch, I'm still doing this lunge here, that I hold for a number of seconds?
You hold it for 20 to 30 seconds. Now, there are a number of different techniques
back
for
foot. The foot that's in the back.
Right.
Now I'm stretching at the left leg.
Yeah.
Is that foot facing forward, or is it off angled to the side?
So when you do it to the side, what happens? Feel that. Now bring it forward. So you're stretching something different.
Yeah.
So that's the whole point, is that
more of a hamstring stretch on this one as well. If I'm
you can get a little bit more. So, but this is for you. So other people may not feel that. That's the whole thing. When you do stretches, what I teach people is to do a lot of different positioning, because there's not just one stretch, there's a whole array of muscles. So if you turn your foot out more, you're going to get more of the muscles towards what we call the adductor, or the inside line of your leg. And if you straighten it, it's going to move more to the front of your thigh, and you're going to be getting that muscle. And if you turn your pelvis even more that way, you're going to feel you get something else. Sure. So it's really worthwhile to learn how to be effective in your stretches and to get the whole array of muscles, as opposed to just doing one stretch and hope your body figures out again how to use it. So now come on out of the stretch. He was in it for a long time.
Yeah.
And now how's it feel?
Like my lower back is like, what are you doing?
Right. Yeah.
So, but it's much looser on the left side now.
Now get into your golf stance again. Okay. And now turn and just feel. Oh, yeah, there you go. Yeah.
You like that?
Uh-huh.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Because last week you didn't.
Didn't like it there, yeah. But just feel how much range there is. Now you can get movement more from your pelvis, okay? Mm-hmm. And you see, as you do that, there's less of that tendency for you to stand up and lock your knees. You feel that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
good.
Nice.
So those are the kind of things that you can do. There's a lot of exercises that you can do, a lot of stretches you can do on the course. I use my golf cart a lot. I put my heel up on the seat while I'm waiting for other people to tee off, and I lean forward, do my hamstring stretch, and sometimes then I'll turn away from the golf cart and just put my foot up so it's kind of bent back, and I can do a quad stretch. So I do this. That's my tendency, is I tend to do this all the time while I'm there. Or I can lean forward and and stretch the calf muscle. So there's a lot of different stretches that you can do while you're out there,
Right. And it's interesting because some people, it seems like they think, well, let's see, my back is hurting, so I should bend over.
Right.
And bounce up and down.
Yeah, bouncing is bad, 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 bad.
No bounce.
So what I was talking about before is that the muscle, when you bounce, the muscle goes into a protective mode. And what it does is it tells the muscle is told to shorten, because that's the way it can protect itself from tearing. Because if you're bouncing, it's worried that you're going to tear it. And so what happens is the muscle shortening, you're bouncing and pulling on it, and that's a real bad recipe for the muscle tearing, because it's just not, it doesn't like that kind of movement.
And don't forget to breathe.
Because
people bend over, they're like, they get down, they bend over. Bounce,
and they go as far as they can and bounce, yeah. And they lock their knees.
Right.
Now,
but the lower back thing is really, isn't it more of a hamstring thing? It's not necessarily your back.
Well, it can be both. It can be both, because the hamstrings attach to the sit bones, which is the bottom of the pelvis. So if the hamstrings are tight, it's going to be pulling your pelvis, which is attached to your back. So they all have to learn how to have a better relationship or play nice together. So hamstring stretching a lot of times will alleviate a lot of back problems. There's also back stretches that I teach to do that you can do out on the golf course that are just very gentle opening stretches with your abdominals engaged. And that's the biggest. When
you say opening, you mean opening the round or opening up your back?
You're rounding your back and you're opening those vertebrae. So you're decompressing the nerves.
Can you give us that? Can you tell us how to do that? Is that
I can't. Well, it's not that complicated. But so basically, you want to find something. If you were in a house, so I'm going to do it like if you practice at home.
Okay.
You go over where your sink is, and you take hold of the counter.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then you stand away so that you're reached out. Mm-hmm. With your arms. You never want to lock any joints. So your arms and your elbows and your shoulders should be soft, is what I say. Head in alignment, and then what you do is you start to lean back with your butt. So it's like you're trying to drop down. It almost feels like you're trying to sit back, okay? Mm-hmm. I often give people the visual like there's a little shelf back there somewhere behind their butt, and their butt's trying to reach down and back.
And sit on it.
So you're kind of pulling, right,
your
feet are flat.
Facing
so
forward.
You're bent over, your hips are at about 90 degrees with your knees bent. You've got your arms up on the counter, and you're going to sit back, and you're going to sort of round and open your back just gently. And what that does is that stretches all those muscles in your back. So you hold that for about 30 seconds. And then when you stand up, it's really important that you stand up slowly using your abdominal muscles to lift you, and that you don't lock your legs. Because if you lock your legs when you stand up, you've immediately put it back into shortness. So it's not nearly as effective as standing up and keeping your knees slightly bent so that your body goes into more length and can maintain what you just put in there.
Fabulous.
Thank you.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. And hopefully, Renee, you got a couple good answers out of your questions. I actually do want to let everyone know that Ann and I are going to be doing a couple videos together.
We are.
And we're going to put those up on Golf Smarter TV. So Ann will give us some good...
That'll probably be in March sometime, right?
Yeah. But we're going to get this going first. We wanted to introduce Ann to you and let you have the opportunity to write to Ann if you have any questions. We mentioned in the last show, and it's going to be up on the blog and in the show notes, and I even mentioned it on our Facebook group. Her website is Marin, M-A-R-I-N, maringolffitness.com. And you'll have an ability to write to her directly from that. I do have another question, though, that I'd like to get to from a listener. And this is from Eric, who's writing from Albany, New York. Eric Fankhanel. Eric Fankhanel. And he actually wanted to know that he says he's struggling to get his hips and shoulders open up at impact like the pros.
Right.
That's the part that I get these questions like, I watch these guys on TV and I'm not doing what they're doing. Well, because they do it 12 hours a day and they're earning a living, and
they pay for fitness people to help them be able to do it really well.
Every single day.
Right.
And so he says, I average about 20 to 20, he gets into the nuance here, 20 to 25 degrees open at impact, while the pros are mid-40s with the hips and upper 40s with the shoulders.
Right.
What swing tip or conditioning advice could you give me to help me turn better through impact?
And so I responded to Eric.
And Eric, thanks so much for writing into Golf Smarter thinking you're going to get some answers. I'm going to go find these answers as best I can, but don't expect me to give you the answer unless I want to find an expert. And I have. And Grassel.
Right.
What do you got?
So when I wrote back to Eric, the thing I said is that we need to, there are a couple things we need to assess. First thing is, where is he getting his rotation from? Okay. And then secondly, is he able to sequence his legs, pelvis, trunk, shoulders, and arms, or are they turning his body more as a unit? And that's often the biggest problem, is that people tend to use their body as a unit. So they're trying to get rotation, but they're trying to get it from the places that don't really rotate as well as they would like. So people will start to do their takeaway. They'll start to turn. Their pelvis will stop because they're in this lower cross pattern that I was talking about, and it's not working very well. And then they'll try to get everything in their upper bodies. Well, the upper bodies tend to be pretty tight in people as well. So what they'll do is they'll then start to lift up and sort of lean back, and then they're in trouble. So what we have to do is we have to start to be able to get the body to turn from a lot of different places. So I was talking earlier about being able to weight shift. Okay, so in order to get rotation, you have to start from your feet. They always say have lively feet. So you start by rotating to the inside of your right leg. Now, this is something you can check. When you rotate back, when you shift onto your right leg, are you on the outside of it? Or are you on the inside of it? You know, you have to start to get that feeling. Where are you at in your foot? Are you on the outside of your foot, the inside of your foot? So if you're more on the inside of your foot and the inside of your leg now has a capacity to actually start to turn and rotate. So then that will build the support for the pelvis to start to turn on the right leg back. And that's where we want to get most of our rotation, is from the hip. So we start back with the hip, then that will stop, and then we'll keep turning, and we'll be able to use the entire spine and the upper back to rotate. And that's where we have to do. That's the sequence. But if you're rotating them all at once, the pelvis stops. You can't get more out of the upper body because there's no place to get it from. So that's often what I work with, is that first people have to learn how to do weight shifting. Because if you're on the left side and you're trying to rotate the right side, it doesn't work.
Hello.
Yes, as we've seen. And so what the body does is it'll tilt and it'll pivot and it'll, pointing. It'll stand up straight. It'll do anything because it can't get the rotation. And so that's what I said, is that we have to start looking at that whole sequence. And one of the things that was great in the Titleist program is they really talked about thinking about how you get the kind of snap that you want as the club head comes through. And they use the analogy of a whip. So in order for a whip to snap, you have to throw it out, and then you have to sequence it back. It has to have a lot of different segments, and then the end whips out. If you just take
Wookie.
Yeah. Wookie. Exactly. He does it very well. But if you just throw the whip out and just kind of pull it back, it's not going to whip because there's not enough. Yeah, and he's not making any noise, but the tongue just came out. It was like sort of a limp thing, you know. So we really do have to get those sequencing happening, because that's the thing, is you sequence on the way back, then you weight shift to the inside of the left leg, and that starts to create this incredible amount of torque. But you have to then sequence to let the pelvis come through, the trunk come through, as we worked with making sure the abdominal muscles are doing firing, and then finally the shoulders, and then the arms and the club head. And that's how you create the rotation and the speed, you know. And if you do it as a unit, you're just not going to be able to do it. Or if you're not weight shifting correctly, or if you can't get through all the different joints. So there's a lot of different components that go into it.
What I love about podcasting, and I'm going to take advantage of it, is you can play this back.
Okay.
Because it was so detailed and there was so much going on. I want to be able to pause it and listen. It's like, okay, and absorb what you just said, because you gave a lot of really awesome, valuable information. But I can pause it. I can listen back. I can do it again.
Right. And you can practice it. That's the other thing. So, you know, I mean, think about the weight shifting, and just, you can look in a mirror. Where am I at? You know, look, am I on the outside of my left hip? Am I on the inside of my right hip? You know, where am I going? And the sequence always has to start with the feet. Always has to start with the feet. So always practice weight shifting from the feet. I give people the idea that to think about is that if your feet are full of sand, okay, that when you go and set up, you should have the sand equally in both feet. Then when you go to weight shift to the right, you're going to actually feel like there's more sand in the right, and that's going to give you that sense of weight shifting onto that right side. So they feel less on the left, more on the right, and that way you can tell you're off the left side, which is really a good thing. And then when you come back, you should be in the middle. There should be sand and weight on both feet. And then when you go to the left, there should be sand and that feeling of weight on the left foot and less on the right. And then you can know you're completely on the left. But if you overshift, if you go too far, you're not going to feel the sand in your foot because you're totally on the outside of it. So that's a little thing that's a really good parameter to start with.
Well, what I hope people are realizing in listening to you speak is that, maybe it's not just my swing.
No.
There's so many more components to it that if you want to get to a level of, real competitive level,
right.
Even if you're competing against yourself, which is where I go.
Right.
But if you want to get at a competitive level, there are so many more elements to look at than just getting a swing coach.
Yeah.
And that finding somebody who is probably a TPI certified,
instructor
right. Is really going to help. And even if you want to have Ann look at your swing, you can send her video.
Right.
You can post your video on YouTube and then send Ann the link.
Right.
She can look at that. And as we talked about, we're going to put some videos up on our Golf Smarter TV channel of Ann helping us out.
Right.
And hopefully it's not just going to be looking at me.
Well, and the other thing that you just said that's really important is that one of the things that I found is that people who work with golf coaches and with pros is that they're often taught to do something and their body's not capable of doing it.
Yeah.
So it's like this first woman I talked about who I talked to her golf pro and he goes, she can't get her hands through. And I'm like, yeah, she can't. I mean, it's not that she isn't, she can't. I mean,
and that's a huge difference.
Yes.
That's a huge difference. I went to this 3-day golf school and she's just like, you can't do that. You can't. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
And I think it wasn't that I just wasn't capable of doing that.
Exactly.
It's not that I wasn't listening to her.
Right.
My body didn't do that.
Yeah, at that point, yeah. So, and that's very frustrating and can be, golf pros can make a lot of money because they keep teaching the same thing over and over again, that's the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. So,
right, but also the sign of a good consultant is one who never gives the final answer.
Yes.
So if you want to keep those clients, you just keep having them come back.
That's right. Yeah.
So there's,
right.
From the business perspective, you want to have them keep coming back, but you don't want to lose the clients.
The best solution is to get a fitness person and a golf coach and have them work together.
And don't play golf ever again because you can't afford it anymore now that you're working with both of those people.
But it's a nice thing if you can get them to meld, because it really does help your golf pro or your golf teacher to know what it is that I'm teaching or other TPI people are teaching, so that they have a better sense of when they need to send someone to get the body mechanics worked on. I mean, most people need it anyway, but it really is, frustrating to keep trying to do something and not be able to do it.
And without naming names, which isn't really necessary, but boy, you know where I'm going. The person that I've been doing my twice a week core classes with for 4 years, she, whenever the golf comes up, she says, yeah, my dad played golf, so I can show you. She's never held a golf club except to take some pictures. And working with you, it was immediate for me that, you get it.
Right.
What's going on, what I'm trying to accomplish, as opposed to just either losing 5 pounds or tightening my gut. It's that I want to incorporate it into my golf game. And you got it immediately. So having somebody that you can work with that really, not just a physical therapist, maybe a sports medicine person, but finding somebody who understands this and being trained by TPI, and it really, as we talked about, it's the only one doing this, is so valuable. Yeah. And you're going to get so much out of it in so many different ways. Right. And for me, like we talked about, sitting, standing, walking, sleeping, golf swing, I'm learning so much more than I ever anticipated. And
that's really the important part, that working, at least with me, and there are people who do this. It's one of my specialties, is that I teach you how to sit, stand, and walk differently. And that's where you really learn how to use your body effectively. Going out on the golf course is sort of the after glow, if you will, of being able to use your body more effectively 24/7. It's just really hard. I tell my clients, if you sit and slump at a computer all day and then you go out and try to hit a golf ball, you're pretty much in deep doo-doo, because your body's not getting what it is that you're trying to get it to do on the golf swing the rest of the time. And so it doesn't magically go out there and not do the slumpy behavior. It will show up in your golf swing. And, even if you play a really good game, it's going to cost you, I just saw this golf pro, and it's so funny. He could barely rotate. And I saw him. I was driving into the golf course and I saw him take a swing, and he's an older guy. Really, he says, well, but I shot a 72. And I go, yeah, but what your body's doing is just, so bad. I mean, it's really, and he's going to get older. And when you see things like total hip replacements and total knee replacements and people with chronic back issues. And, you may be able to get the club on the ball, but you basically want to have a body that can take you doing that until you're 80 years old or 90 or whatever, Right.
I mean, isn't the goal to beat your age?
Yeah.
To shoot lower than your age.
And I actually worked with an 85-year-old, and he started hitting it 10 yards further after working with me just a couple sessions. Yeah.
And that's 10 yards at 85 is a big deal.
Big deal. Yeah.
Because he probably doesn't walk that far. He just takes the golf cart.
Yeah.
No, we've had Catherine Roberts of Yoga for Golfers on the show a number of times, and she does have a book called Swing Flaws and Fitness Fixes. It's on our Golfer Smart. But it's nice to look at the pictures and to see what she says. But you really, like I've always advocated, don't watch the Golf Channel and think that that's going to correct your swing. That you really do need to work with somebody one-on-one if you have a specific issue. That's why, for me, I don't like to get into a lot of swing mechanics. I like to get into stuff that you can do with your own head, and it'll improve your game, mental game, strategy, things like that, and fitness. I think that you really need to work one-on-one with people.
It's better. I mean, anything that you do, if you get an idea, just like some of the concepts that we talked about here, it will help. I mean, it's like, if you're in Saskatchewan and you don't have anybody to work with, don't think that you can't do anything. It's better to do it. But it's also, it is good if you can have someone look at it. And like you said, I can look at the golf swing. I can look at, you could even send me pictures of your posture, and I could just kind of look at those as well. So there are ways that you can do it, even if you're, now that everybody's online, there's lots of ways to do it. So
Saskatchewan is much closer than
than it used to be. Right, exactly.
And any emails that come in from Saskatchewan, I'm forwarding to you. And because this is a members only premium podcast, I don't have to bleep out doo-doo when you say doo-doo. Any recommendations on training aids or fitness aids that are not really expensive that people could have that will help them keep things loose?
I'll tell you the truth is that if you learn how to use your body effectively, if you learn how to stretch, you don't really need much of anything.
God, we love to hear that.
Yeah. The one thing I have a lot of people use is a tennis ball. So while they're driving, I
thought you were going to say one of those big rubber bands.
No. So this is to loosen, okay? So while you're driving, you drop it behind your back. So you can put it behind your low back, on either side or in the middle, or you can put it between your shoulder blades and you just kind of lean back against it, and you sort of use it to rub around a little bit. And it's sort of, as you lean into it, it goes in there, and you don't want to press too hard, just enough that you kind of feel a little pressure on it. And you can just hang out there. Just let the ball sort of hang out in one place, or you can do little tiny spirals and then, move it to another place. So while you're driving, you can do these kind of loosening for your back. It's a great little way to do it.
Especially on the way and after. Right. When you're leaving the golf course.
Well, even when you're stuck in traffic. I mean, as I drive into work, I have one, I put it underneath my left hip, which tends to be bad for me. And I just sit there and let it sit there and work out some of those tight spots while I'm driving. Nice. I don't tend to do it on my right too much because it's on the gas pedal. So, but there's, so a little tennis ball, you can lay it, you can put it on the floor and lay on it. So that's a real simple way to sort of get things loosened up. So simple.
So the gas pedal gets stuck. It wasn't your Toyota. No, it was the tennis ball.
Exactly. Right. It was the tennis ball underneath my leg rolling around. Yeah.
All right. Well, great. This was really informative. I really had a great time with this one. I feel so much better. I got that free little stretching here, and hopefully you got to see it all for yourself. And again, MarinGolfFitness.com is Ann Grassel. She's a physical therapist, a sports medicine physical therapist, and a TPI certified golf instructor. But let's clarify here. I don't want to misread it. You're not going to be working on my golf swing, correct?
No. So this is really important. What I'm going to do is teach your body how to work really well while you do your golf swing.
There's a missing link here that we have between the swing and the body that we're trying to connect.
And that's the biggest problem that I see is the missing link is that we do exercises and stretching and all that, and we just hope our body figures out how to use it. And what I will actually teach people to do is to have a place in their bodies that learn how to engage core, and that everything they do is assisting them in enhancing the new patterns they're establishing in their bodies. And that's the missing link. So what I do is help people work really well with their bodies while they do their golf swing. I don't teach the golf swing. That's what golf pros do.